This past week, a group of our members of Zion began gathering for study. And it is a study about the Bible, so it's an opportunity to explore kind of what the Bible is and what its origins are and how it came into its final shape and all of those kinds of things. And in the midst of that, there's opportunity to also read the Bible together. And so there's some Bible study. One of the lessons that we read this past week was one that was quite familiar to us. It came from that section of Mark's gospel where the crucifixion happened. That point where Simon of Cyrene carried Jesus' cross out to the mount for him, and then on through to the end. What was different this time through was that the author of this Bible study, a professor up at Luther Seminary by the name of David Lose, he asked us to pay attention to something very particular in the story. He asked us to pay attention to who asked the questions. And as we read our way through that whole thing, what we started to recognize was that the people who spoke assertions, who said, "This is what is," often got it wrong. We also discovered that the only person who asked a question was Jesus. And that question was asked from the cross. My God, why have you forsaken me?" As we wrestled with what we were seeing, as a group, we started to wonder, with Jesus asking a question like that from the cross, what kinds of questions would be completely out of bounds for us to ask? Is there a question that can't be asked? What David Lose wants to suggest is that indeed where we are, the biblical witness says that the people who ask the questions end up coming into a deeper understanding, a deeper sense of relationship with God. In fact, the ability to ask the question in the first place is a sign of a relationship where questions can be asked, where indeed there is a trust that already exists, because we don't ask questions if we don't trust. Now, I've been in the company of people who said flat out, you can't ask those kinds of questions, and you can't express concerns about your faith. And those times when we have moments when what's going on here, or when we talk about or we experience some struggle with our belief, and when I, as pastor, talked about that, I had people say to me, "Oh, pastor, you can't talk like that." That's a problem. Within the Lutheran tradition, though, it is very much understood to be that the questions and the struggle are a part and a parcel of the conversation and relationship that we have with God. Today we hear the story. It is that night of the resurrection. The women went out to the tomb earlier in the morning, and they found an incredible thing. And Mary had an encounter with Jesus, mistook him to be a gardener, for pity's sake. It's that same day. And the disciples have gathered at the house. And they're just a little bit worried. No, they're a lot worried that what has happened to Jesus could happen to them. So they've got the door locked. They're doing everything in their power to find a sense of security. And in the midst of all that fear, in the midst of all that wondering about what's going to happen next, Jesus shows up. But if you pay attention, it isn't until he shows them his hands, his wounds, that they rejoice in the presence of the Lord. Jesus shows up and says to them, "Peace be with you," and they don't recognize him. He shows them, and they do. And then he says, again, "Peace be with you," and he gives them a charge. He gives them responsibility. "As the Father sent me, so I send you." What did the Father send Jesus to do? To enact the reign of God in this reality, in this world. To love the world. To reconcile the world with God and with one another. To make all things new. To announce forgiveness. To reach out to those who are on the margins and welcome them into an awareness of God's love. "As the Father has sent me, so I send you," Jesus says. And he tells them that if you forgive the sins of any, they are forgiven. If you retain them, they are retained. That's a lot of authority, folks. It's big.